Colleen burst out of her house, shrieking like a banshee. "He's lying! My son would never do that!" she screamed, jabbing a finger toward the neighbor's little girl, an 8-year-old who clutched her bleeding head, crying so hard she could barely breathe. A crowd of neighbors had already gathered, some frozen in shock, others with their phones up, recording. Her father, Daniel Rivera, a black man, stood rigid, his phone clenched in his hand, the 911 call still open. His voice shook with rage as he tried to keep it steady for the dispatcher. Only 15 minutes earlier, it had been a normal sunny afternoon. Daniel's daughter had stepped off her school bus and started the short walk home. Passing Colleen's driveway was part of her daily routine, but this time, Colleen's 17-year-old son was waiting there. Taller, heavier, nearly twice her size, he held a baseball bat loosely in his grip, and in one sudden, twisted motion, he swung, not at a ball, but straight at the side of her head. The impact dropped her instantly. Blood streaked across her pink backpack, a sight burned forever into Daniel's memory. Have you ever witnessed something so brutal, so unexpected, that it changed how you looked at the world in an instant? What would you do if it was your child lying there, blood running down their face, while the neighbor tried to twist the story? Before we go further, what country or city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where our viewers are tuning in. And if you believe no parent should ever have to watch their child bleed because of someone else's cruelty, hit that like button and subscribe to Story Arc, because standing up against violence and lies is how real justice begins. Colleen appeared after the scream echoed through the street, but instead of rushing to help, instead of calling for an ambulance, she showed no sign of alarm. She simply pulled her son back as though he were an innocent child and insisted the girl had tripped. "My son isn't violent," she declared flatly. Daniel's composure shattered. He jabbed a finger toward the lamppost at the edge of the block. "There's a security camera right there," he told her, voice tight. "This whole street is on record. You'd better hope the police arrive before I do something I regret." Colleen smirked. "You think the cops care about some black kid with ketchup on her face? Get off my property." Daniel looked down at his daughter, still sobbing, her breath sharp and shallow. Something inside him shifted, not wild anger, but a chilling clarity. Colleen had no idea who he really was. She didn't know his background, didn't know he had once trained federal interrogators in how to dismantle liars in court without ever laying a hand on them. He straightened, locked eyes with her, and spoke with cold precision. "Colleen, you just declared war on the wrong family." For the briefest moment, her smug smile faltered. Colleen still carried herself like the street was her kingdom, as if she were untouchable. She didn't realize her crown was nothing more than paper. Sirens cut through the tense silence before the flashing lights even appeared. 2 police cruisers swung into view, stopping hard at the curb. Daniel waved them over, still kneeling beside his daughter. The female officer stepped out quickly and hurried toward the girl. Daniel kept his voice steady, though it took every ounce of control. "She's bleeding heavily from the scalp. The weapon was a baseball bat. The suspect is inside, 17 years old. His mother is covering for him." That was all Colleen needed to make a scene. She stormed forward like she was auditioning for a stage play. "He didn't do anything. This man is making threats against my family. He needs to be arrested." The male officer turned on her sharply. "Ma'am, we haven't even started the investigation." Well, start with me," Colleen snapped. "I'm the president of this HOA." And just like that, her first mistake slipped out. The officer raised an eyebrow. "That's not a law enforcement title, ma'am." Colleen gave a sarcastic laugh. "Well, technically I can press charges if someone's disturbing the neighborhood peace. I've done it before." Daniel rose slowly, pulling a USB drive from his pocket. He placed it firmly into the female officer's hand. "Here's the footage. The streetlight camera caught everything. Her son striking my daughter without warning. I pulled it wirelessly before you got here." Colleen lunged forward, trying to snatch it back. "You're not even allowed to access those," she barked. The officer stepped back. "Ma'am, those cameras are city property. If he accessed it legally, it's none of your concern. Step away, or you will be detained for obstruction." For the first time, Colleen's confidence cracked. Her eyes widened ever so slightly, uncertainty creeping in. But she wasn't finished. Her expression shifted suddenly, as though she remembered a secret weapon. She pulled out her phone, a smile tugging at her lips. Fine, you want to play this game? Then I'll call my cousin. He's a sheriff's deputy. Let's see what he thinks when he gets here. Daniel didn't flinch. His reply was quick and razor sharp. Good. Then maybe he and I can compare badges. Colleen froze at his words, her smirk faltering. The male officer's gaze shifted. You a cop? He asked carefully. Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out an old leather case. It wasn't a badge anymore, but the federal emblem pressed into it was unmistakable. Retired Federal Interrogations Division, he said evenly. I trained half the sheriffs in this county. Colleen went pale instantly. For the first time since this started, she was speechless. The silence that followed pressed heavy on everyone's chest. Daniel noticed her hands trembling, the smallest twitch of fear breaking through her mask. Behind the glass door, her son, once visible, slipped out of sight completely. The female officer passed the USB stick to her partner, who walked it back to the cruiser to review. Colleen, scrambling for control, softened her tone. Look, maybe it was just an accident, she said, her voice almost pleading. Kids play rough sometimes. No need to ruin a boy's future over a misunderstanding. That word ignited something in Daniel. He turned to her, his stare cold. A misunderstanding is when someone spills juice on the carpet, he said. Not when your son smashes an 8-year-old skull with a bat. You've lied, covered up, and manipulated the police since this started. Colleen flinched, stepping back half a pace. It's not like that, she began, but she was cut off when the male officer returned, his face hard. I've reviewed the footage, he said firmly. It clearly shows your son standing on the sidewalk with the bat. The girl walks by, says nothing, and he strikes her. Full force, no provocation. Colleen's eyes darted wildly. But he has ADHD. He didn't mean to. The officer's tone was sharp. This isn't a school suspension we're talking about. This is felony assault. And if you interfered with this investigation, which you did, we'll be adding obstruction charges. At that moment, Colleen's son was led out of the house in cuffs, his head bowed, cheeks flushed red. He couldn't look anyone in the eye. Colleen tried to push past the officers, but the female cop raised her hand like a stop sign. You interfere again, she said coldly, and you're going in too. Colleen's eyes darted around frantically, searching the crowd. Neighbors were still filming, every phone pointed at her, the weight of their judgment crushing down. Colleen's panic tipped into desperation. She threw her head back and screamed, voice raw and furious. This is racist. He's targeting us because we're white. The entire street went silent. Even the birds seemed to stop mid-song. Daniel rose slowly, each step toward her measured and deliberate. His voice was low, calm, and dangerous. Your son attacked my daughter, he said. She's 8, he's 17. And instead of calling an ambulance, you're standing here playing the race card? Colleen's face twitched, but before she could respond, Daniel leaned in just enough for her to hear his next words. You'd better pray she doesn't slip into a coma tonight, because if she does, you're not just going to jail, you're going viral first. Colleen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her lips trembled like a broken screen flickering. The neighbors, once whispering among themselves, now recorded openly. Some were already live streaming the entire scene. The spotlight was no longer one she could control. It burned straight through her. And then, the breaking point. From behind her, her son began to sob, loud, ragged cries that carried across the block. Mom, you said they wouldn't do anything. You said it was fine. The officers froze mid-step. Colleen spun on him, eyes wide. Shut up! Don't say another word! But the boy's guilt spilled out uncontrollably. You told me to swing the bat before she got to our driveway. You said she was just another noisy black kid. Stop talking! Colleen shrieked, lunging toward him. The male officer grabbed her mid-motion and slammed her against the patrol car. That's it. You're under arrest for obstruction, child endangerment, and interfering with a felony assault investigation. You can't arrest me, Colleen howled, thrashing against the metal. I run this neighborhood. The officer didn't even blink. Not anymore. He began reading her rights as she kicked and screamed. No one stepped in to help her. Not the neighbors. Not even her son, who was being loaded into the back of a cruiser, his face streaked with tears. Daniel sat in the back of the ambulance, his daughter's small hand clutched in his own. He fought hard to keep his composure, refusing to let her see him break. She was stable, but her head wound required stitches and scans. The paramedic worked carefully. By that night, Colleen was officially booked. Mugshot, fingerprints, every humiliating detail. The same woman who once knocked on neighbors' doors with phony citations and HOA threats now sat behind a steel door, begging for a phone call like everyone else. The local news picked up the story before morning. The headlines spread quickly. HOA president and son arrested after brutal assault on 8-year-old girl. Victim's father was former federal agent. By noon, the story had gone viral. The footage Daniel handed to police leaked across social media. Colleen's rant, her son's tearful confession, her shrieking denial, all of it plastered across Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Meanwhile, Daniel's daughter recovered faster than doctors expected. She had a concussion and stitches, but her spirit remained unbroken. Bright, brave. Within a week, Colleen's world collapsed. A foreclosure notice was taped across her front door in bold print. Investigators uncovered what the viral footage had already suggested. She had been siphoning HOA funds for her own use. Trips, spa treatments, even her son's costly disciplinary therapy sessions had all been paid with money meant for the neighborhood. Once the board saw the truth, the foundation of her so-called empire crumbled. Her title was stripped, her accounts frozen, and the very neighbors she used to bully with fines over mailboxes and garden decorations voted unanimously to dissolve the HOA altogether. The reign she flaunted for years was gone in days. In court, Colleen's son admitted guilt. He was sentenced to juvenile detention, mandatory counseling, and supervised community service. The judge reminded him bluntly that swinging a bat at a child was not roughhousing, it was assault. Colleen's case was worse. She faced charges for obstruction of justice, child endangerment, lying to law enforcement, and financial fraud. Her attorney tried every angle, pleas, excuses, even tears, but the public had already seen too much. The video footage was undeniable. The rant, the lies, the blood on Daniel's daughter's face, no one could forget. Before sentencing, the judge asked Daniel if he wished to speak. He rose slowly, eyes locked on Colleen as she sat trembling at the defense table. "You didn't just hurt my daughter," Daniel said firmly. "You weaponized fear, power, and privilege. But you forgot one thing. Real power doesn't scream. Real power waits, and then it ends you." The courtroom fell silent. Colleen broke down, sobbing in her chair as the judge delivered the final decision. 5 years in state prison, no parole. As the bailiff led her away, she glanced back once, her eyes hollow, searching for sympathy that wasn't there. Daniel didn't flinch. He stood steady, his daughter's safety his only focus. Outside, the little girl slipped her hand into his and whispered, "Is the bad lady going away forever?" Daniel smiled gently. "No, sweetheart, just long enough to remember what forever almost looked like." Together, they walked into the daylight, whole, free, and safe at last. And if you believe bullies who hide behind power should always face the truth in the end, hit that like button and subscribe to Story Arc. Because justice isn't just about the courtroom, it's about protecting families and exposing lies wherever they live.